What's up, guys? I'm Josh, and welcome to another Audiophile build. Today, we're going to be talking about the Hifiman XS and kind of a battle of two amplifiers at two different price points. There's something in this hobby called scalability. Basically, what that means is that as you have a headphone, if it can scale well, it means that as you go up in performance of amplifier and DAC and quality of music, that the headphone also sounds better and better. Now, some consider this to be a good thing, some consider this to be a bad thing. The reason why it might be a good thing is that, okay, if it doesn't scale at all and it always sounds the same on everything, well, you can get maximum performance for the cheapest for your amplification and your DAC options. But if it does scale well, you might want to be thinking about improving your other components in the system. Now, where this gets sort of complicated today, and the point of these audiophile builds is never to be the best for the price range or the best ever. It's not really like that. It's more just discussing your options. The point of this video today is to see if you pair this with a $200 amplifier, is it going to sound substantially worse than a $600 one, which actually eclipses the price of this headphone, which I typically don't recommend doing. I really like having the headphone be the most expensive component in your system and everything else being fractions of that price. And the way I look at this is like, you have $500 for the headphone, and for this Magnus, you have another $200. So does it sound good as a $700 system? And then I have to make the same judgment with the Singzer SA1. And then I have to ask, is this good as an $1,100 system? And if it is it really worth the price difference between those two? So I'm going to be doing this a bit live today. I don't actually know. I haven't compared these two amplifiers on this headphone, and that's what we're going to be doing. I think the first song I'm going to listen to is Muddy Waters by LP. That's got a lot of strong bass notes, sort of a high-end vocalist, which isn't always the best on this headphone. This can often come across a little bit sharp. I want to see how the amplifier influences both the bass response and the vocalist in this particular song. So the first thing that's standing out, right now it's impossible to distinguish what's the headphone and what's the amplifier, so I'm just going to state what I'm paying attention to and what I'm noticing. Is the bass response is pretty light. I do remember that being kind of a feature of this headphone compared to what I would find this bass supposed to be sounding like. And then the actual introductory instruments, that slight rattling is kind of bright actually. The voice though, not as much as a problem as I was expecting. So now let's go ahead and play on the Gestard. I'm going to play the same approximately 40 seconds. If the bass is stronger on the Gestard, it's by a little bit, not by a lot. I've definitely heard other headphones that probably have a little bit more response to the bass increase of the, I'm sorry, I keep calling it the Gestard. I'm an idiot. It looks similar to the Gestard. I've definitely heard headphones on that have a better response to the Singzer's bass increase. The voice sounds a tad more defined on the Singzer, not a lot, and it's very, very minor. I don't think most people would pick it out unless they were really listening back and forth, but that's kind of what we're doing here. The treble did seem a hair darker on the Singzer. I don't necessarily know yet if that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes having something sound a little bit more, defined up top is a benefit. All right, and then I'm going to listen to something more relaxed, not so dynamic on the slams and stuff, not so crazy on the vocals, and that's going to be Sidetracked from Tannerell. It's one of my just personal enjoyment songs. I like it a lot. I think I'm going to start on the Singzer and go to the Magnus. Okay, so the introductory vocals, the microphone definitely has a little bit of a sizzle that's picking her up. Like, it's not quite over the top sibilant, but it's kind of just under that level where it's a little sharper on the S's than I think it probably should be. That's just a thing about her recording studio that I've noticed. Whatever she uses, it seems to be that way. The Singzer definitely took a little bit of the edge off, whereas the Magnus just kind of let that go through. Now, I've heard this song on a lot of systems, on a lot of headphones. In this particular case, to me, it sounds like the Magnus is actually a little bit more accurate for her voice there. Though the bass dynamics for the kind of bass rhythm note that keeps hitting in the background, that seems a little bit more impressive and kind of more correct on the Singer. So it's a little bit of back and forth here. There's about to be about after I think 50 seconds or so on the song, there's going to be a very, very low note. This headphone, I'm kind of curious how it's going to handle it because it's not a super crazy sub bass sort of headphone. And I'm curious which one is going to provide a better sub bass experience. I'm going to try to only listen to the sub bass here. Okay, yeah, so based off of the two songs that I've listened to, the Singer definitely seems to hit a little bit harder for both bass dynamics and forwardness. It's not a crazy amount, but it's notable. Now I'm gonna switch songs to So Handsome Hello from Woodkid. This is a very good kind of imaging test. I'm gonna be testing a lot of placement on things. I don't expect this to be very different, but we'll see. I really like how this metallic like hit that they're doing every once in a while, that like ching sound. I really like how it's presented on this headphone and on this Magnus. It's very good. The bass response, again, this isn't a super bassy headphone. I wish it was a little bit stronger here, but this song sounds great on this. So this is actually not really what I was expecting. The Magnus almost has better dynamics on that slam, even though technically speaking it shouldn't. The dynamic range of the Singer, is really, really good. So is the Magnus, but in this particular case, that metallic kit actually sounds a lot better on the Magnus. And I also noticed that the background ambient music that isn't those defined vocal notes or those defined imaging like placement hits, that has a more surrounding delivery to that background sound, that seems to be more on top and fuller on the Singer. I don't know if this is accurate. I don't know if this is the more accurate representation of the sound or not. It definitely sounds like you can pick up a little bit more of that background ambience, but if it's not meant to be that way, then the Singer might actually be less accurate here. The difference is minor. It kind of just sounds like a slight position shift, which is what I wasn't expecting. Imaging placement for those small, dings and ticks and things, those are about the same. I don't really notice much of a difference between those. All right, I'm going to listen to just another favorite song of mine. This is going to be All of Me from Postmodern Jukebox, and this is the Kaya Victoria cover. I think they've done this song a couple times. It's Kaya Victoria one that I like. And I'm strictly going to be listening to her voice. Her voice is wonderful in this song. As a brief side note, there's also lots of like room acoustics on this one, so they're not really recorded super close to the source, so you get a lot of environmental information. Not the key focus for me personally, but still a pretty good song. So the differences here are, I think, minor, and for tonality, I would consider these about the same. I didn't really notice her voice sounded substantially different. Like a headphone change would make a much bigger difference here than the Amplifier did. One thing that the amps did differ on though was sort of a kind of these like micro dynamic changes in her voice volume. So I noticed that the Magnus was a little bit more, I don't know how exactly to say this, it's more jumpy on the sound signature. It's more like prone to spiking up higher in dynamic volume very quickly. That doesn't necessarily mean that the dynamic range difference is better, technically speaking, than the Singer. It just seemed a little bit more prone to really shooting her voice up. When you're listening to somebody, their voice doesn't go from 1 to 10 that quickly. And it seemed like it was either playing between 0 and 4 or 4 to like, 8, 9, 10. Whereas the Singer sounded like it had a full 1 to 10 for dynamic volume for a voice, and it seemed to go up and down on that scale very, very easily. Again, minor differences, probably not something that your average person would notice unless they were really, really paying attention to it. But I actually found that the Singer made the recording sound more rich, a little bit better recorded, actually. I don't know if, I don't actually know which one's more accurate. It's possible that that dynamic jump is responsible in the microphone or their studio that they're recording in. If I'm going to be based off measurements, the Singer is technically more accurate, but listening impressions here, I think I like the Singer for her voice specifically. Now I want to pay attention to some lower mid-range, and I think for that I'm going to be listening to Avi Kaplan. I've been listening to this song Change on the Rise a lot, and that's a good song. This song, besides the bass differences that we already covered, I think has probably the least amount of difference. I felt like the sound staging, the imaging, the vocal timbre, the texture of the voice was about the same. So if we're gonna specifically talk about this headphone, I think that the Singer is a little bit better, mostly because of how it just handles the voicing. Actually was the big difference, and the slight increase of bass I think benefits this particular headphone. What I would do here is not pick this headphone if you're looking for a lot of bass. This is very, very good for things like treble response, imaging and sound staging, and a very kind of clean and clear sound. That's what this headphone's really good at. It's why it's one of the most popular $500 headphones on the market today, and I think it deserves to be that. But that system for $1,100, I don't think is worth the asking price, personally. I think that the Magnus is probably the way to go in this particular case, even though I think the Singer is slightly a better performer. If you're going to be dealing with something more expensive, like a Diana, for example, Dianas are not the craziest bass response headphones. And so an amplifier like this that has a slight emphasis in the bass can actually be really good. When I did this Singer SA1 review, I actually brought up the Diana V2 specifically because of that. And I thought that that was a fantastic pairing. Though I would say that I think that the smarter choice is identify what you want in your sound system and buy headphones that get you closest to that goal, because amplifiers are going to assist with getting there, but they're not going to be the defining component that changes the game for you, not usually at least. So if you're looking for something that increases bass, I think you're going to get better results going with a different headphone than a different amplifier, even though that is a benefit of this compared to the Magnus at least. Okay, that's going to be it. Let me know if you want more kind of more on-the-go live videos like this. They are very easy for me to do, so that's a benefit. But you know, if the structure is not there, then it's not there. All right, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Till the next video.